Good morning, everybody. Welcome to lesson 2 in thinking into results. We're going to talk today about the knowing doing gap. So if you've been following along, last week we covered our goals and what type of goals to set. Some of us are setting A type, B type goals and wondering why we're cycling through not getting anywhere in life, right? So we have to set C type goals. That's what we talked about last week. And this week, we're going to get into the paradigm. So I'm going to introduce you guys to this concept. And I know some of you follow Bob Proctor. Some of you have already heard and seen some of this before, but we're going to get into super detail on this. And of course, after this is over, you'll be able to download the worksheets that go along with this lesson, and you'll be able to put it into practice. So welcome, everybody. I see we've got Indiana in the house. We've got Robert Hollis in the house. Who else? Shannon Moss. Deb is in here as well. We got Atlanta, Vegas, Las Vegas. That's where we're at too. West Virginia, Florida. All right. People coming in from all over the country and all over the world. All right. So what I'm going to share with you guys today, this might be one of the most profitable ideas that you ever focus your attention on. And honestly, nearly every coaching call that I ever do, this is where people are stuck. It's lesson 2. It's the knowing doing gap. This is where people get stuck the most. Now, sometimes they get stuck, further on down in these lessons, but oftentimes what I find is most people get stuck right here. So if you're finding yourself at a plateau, either in your business or in any goal that you have set, this could be the reason why you're stuck. Okay, so let's talk about the knowing doing gap. There's an enormous difference between what people know and what people do. Big difference. We've been raised, conditioned, it's been passed on genetically and environmentally. Certainly a part of our early conditioning in our early lives, that, and even our whole educational system, if you've been through school, is based on getting people to know things. Over $60 billion a year, at least in North America, is spent on training people to know more. You go to MLM training, what are they doing? They're teaching you how to know more. They're teaching you things, more knowledge, more information, you're gathering knowledge and information in your head, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to leave that meeting or leave that event and do something with it. Have you ever been to a convention before and you're so fired up, you're taking lots of notes, you got pages and pages and pages. You leave out of there, you say, I have my plan, I'm going to go put it into action. You get back home, and what happens? You snap right back into your reality, and all of it goes to the wayside. You don't do the things that you know. And then there's this other interesting phenomenon in our industry where you see these industry trainers. They know everything about network marketing. If there was a SAT on network marketing, they would for sure pass it with flying colors. They know everything. They know how to close a sale. They know how to do a presentation. They know how to overcome objections. They know how to build a team. They know how to do everything, yet none of them are actually network marketers. They know a lot. They don't do anything. Now, we have an interesting group in our own company. We've got Todd Falcone and Robert Hollis, former industry legends and trainers that are now back in the field doing what they know. So that's amazing. But a lot of times there's that big gap, right? There's a big gap between what you know and what you do. And, there's this interesting thing that I heard growing up, because my whole family is full of educators. And they said, those that can't do, teach. That's funny, right? Those who can't do, teach. Why do they say that? Because you know a lot, but you're not putting it to practice. You can pass the test. You can read it. You can remember it. And you can repeat it, but that doesn't mean that you know how to actually succeed in and out of this industry, okay? So we're given books, right? We study the books, the professor covers what's in the book, and then we're asked questions based on what's in the book, and if we remember the answers, we make it a passing grade. And if we do that enough times, we may end up with a degree. Sure, I've got one right here behind me, see that? I got a degree. It took me 8 years to get a 4-year degree, but that's okay. I was an early, mom, and I took one class at a time. And honestly, the only reason I finished my college education was because I didn't want to pay for my student loans. And if I kept going, even at a slow pace, I didn't have to, my payments were deferred. I don't think that's a real solid goal, to be honest, but that was where I was at the time. So if we get a degree, right? And then we could be walking around an encyclopedia of knowledge and yet not be very effective human beings. Do you know anybody that's gotten all the degrees? They have all the accolades, and yet they're not successful in their life. I had a talk with my son last night. He was stressed out. He was in a lower math class than he felt that he should be in. And I said, well, did you take a test to get into that class? Yes. Did you do well on that test? No. All right, well, then you're where you should be, And he's like, but this is an average class. And I know I'm not average. And if I don't get into this class, then my whole career, like his whole education career path is thrown off. I said, listen, it's more important that you're happy right now. It's more important than that, than what class you're in. You got to make the best of everything, because I know most brilliant people in all the world that aren't very effective human beings. They graduated from Harvard and Yale, some of them, and they're not that successful now. Not by my standards anyway, because I feel like you got to have some time freedom in there too, not just dollars. So I had a good talk with my son about that last night. Interesting quote from John Ruskin. He says, education does not mean teaching people what they don't know. It's teaching people how to behave as they do not behave. That's really what education is supposed to be about. And yet we find that our educational system is built around just knowing, but not doing. Some of the most brilliant people in the world never make things happen. And for some strange reason, you'll find another individual that may be functionally illiterate, and yet they're multimillionaires, and they built multi-million or billion-dollar organizations all over the world. So why is that? Let's think about that for a minute. Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. So I want to focus today on two parts of the mind. Now, psychologists and psychiatrists will tell you that there's more parts of the mind than just two, right? But today, I'm going to talk about just two parts of the mind, and one is your conscious mind. Your conscious mind, and if you can imagine a drawing, in fact, I think I'm just going to draw it for you guys right now. In lesson 4, I'm going to actually bring up my whiteboard, but for today's purposes, I'm going to just use old school pad and paper, all right? So here is the two parts of the mind. Now, the first part is the conscious mind right here, okay? Now, if this is a person, let me just finish my drawing here. This is a stick person, okay? The conscious mind, and then down here we've got the subconscious mind. Forgive my handwriting there. The conscious mind gathers information. That's what school focuses on, okay, from a very early age. And people gather information, but they don't know what to do with it once they've got it. All right, and the second part of the mind, well, let's still focus there really quickly. Conscious mind, educated mind, gathers information. You read, remember, repeat it. Doesn't mean we're actually going to do it, just means that we know it, right? And the number 2 is the subconscious mind, right here. And this causes our body to do what it does. This is where your behavior comes from. And your behavior is what determines your results, all right? Also, the subconscious mind deals more with the feeling, okay? Think about this. You do things subconsciously all the time. When you drive to work every day, you probably don't even need to put GPS in. You don't have to consciously think about it. You just automatically do it. In fact, you could probably sing a song on your way to work. On the radio, you can bump the music. You can turn the air on. You can do all kinds of other things consciously, because subconsciously you're driving the car. Do you have to think about when you're walking? Like if you're walking to the restroom or you're walking to another room? No, you don't have to think about it. Your body's doing that. It's habitual. You've trained your body subconsciously to do those things. You move into that action. Subconscious mind's responsible for the actions that we take, and your conscious mind is responsible for gathering information. That's your encyclopedia mind, okay? If you don't go to the primary cause of results, your behavior causes results, right? And if you don't go to your primary cause of results, there's not going to be any permanent change. The primary cause of results equals permanent change. And so you've seen people that go on diets before. Think about that for a minute. Now, they don't want the results that they're going to get by eating the cake when they're walking by. They don't even really want the cake. To be honest, they look at the cake, it looks good, they kind of want it, they're going to eat it, they're going to eat it. Somebody comes up to them and says, I thought you were on a diet. I am. Why'd you eat that cake? I don't know. Your subconscious programming ate that cake is what happened, because that's your action. That's your habitual training. That's your subconscious programming. That's why you ate that cake. Okay. So if you don't go to the primary cause of those results, which is often your mindset, you set your mind like a thermostat. We have a cybernetic mechanism within our mind, which is a mechanism that controls and auto-corrects where we need to be. If you lose 10 pounds, but you haven't changed the cybernetic mechanism in your mind, you're going to find those 10 pounds again. If you've hit 25K and you just can't seem to push back past beyond that, it's because your cybernetic mechanism is set to 25K. You have to change the setting on the thermostat in your mind in order to change the results, right? So why do people behave as they do? The answer to that lies within the subconscious mind, and it's in what we call the paradigm. Now, if you're taking notes, I want you to write this down or at least paraphrase. A paradigm is that section in our subconscious mind that gathers habits. So our conscious mind is gathering information, but our subconscious mind is gathering habits. It's important to know the difference, okay? Now, a habit is nothing more than an idea that's fixed in a person's subconscious mind that causes them to do something without any conscious thought. We all have an enormous amount of habits. I mean, just think about when you wake up in the morning, we sort of move into a routine, right? In fact, you probably put your pants on the same way that you do every single day, right? You go left and then right, or you do right and then left. In fact, I have the same routine every single morning, which is why I'm like, if I'm going to start working out, I have to change my morning routine. Well, when you have two toddlers in your bed, sometimes that morning routine gets flipped upside down. Shannon says coffee first. Yeah. So we move into a routine. We don't even think about it. It's automatic because our mind's not even really awake. We're still kind of like, walking through the house, but our body's taking all the actions without us even thinking about it. Have you ever made a wrong turn on a freeway and then you're like, dang it, I didn't mean to do that. But then the next time you come through that again, you make the same wrong turn again, and then you make the same wrong turn again. And then you have to think, I have to become consciously aware in this moment in order to change my direction. Have you ever done that before? I did that probably the first 4 times on my way home from work. I was like, goodness, why do I keep making the same freaking mistake over and over again? All right, because it's in our subconscious programming. We created a habit there. So stop and think of the people in our business. Let's talk about network marketing here for a minute. That's what this is all about, right? Some people join and quit every single deal that they're in. They join, quit, join, quit. Join, quit. Before you know it, they've created a habit that it's okay to quit when you get to resistance, you get to struggle, you get to obstacle, you get to something hard, and then you've trained your mind to go backwards to comfort. And so you know that if you join and quit, you've created that habit habitually. You're not going to push through that wall. You're not going to get to the next level. You're going to stay right in your comfort zone because that's what you've trained yourself to do. You don't even realize you've trained yourself to do it, and yet that's what's happening. Some people habitually late everywhere they go. Do you ever have anybody in your family and you're like, oh, that's it's on Josh time. He's not late everywhere, but I'm just saying, you ever have somebody in your family and you know that you tell them the barbecue's at 3 o'clock, you know they're not coming until 5 o'clock. They're habitually late everywhere they go. Okay. You also know people that are habitually early everywhere they go. Now, it doesn't matter if you talk to them. It doesn't matter if you scold them. It doesn't matter if you point it out. It doesn't matter if you try to get into their conscious mind. Their conscious mind knows they don't want to be late every time they show up someplace. However, they're going to keep doing it because if they don't change the programming, that's the result they're going to get. Okay. Some people are habitually just the way they are. In fact, we all are habitually just the way we are. So we have to really take a look at our habits. Now let's think of salespeople. Let's think about sales, and even in our industry, there's millions spent on sales training, but not a lot of great sales people. Why is it 1% of the people make 97% of all the income that's being earned? Why is that? How come there's lots of millions of dollars going into sales training for organizations, and yet we don't see a lot of great salespeople coming out of that training? Anybody can be, but not everybody is. We train the people, we show them how to do things, and then they don't do it. Can you guys relate? Anybody on your team like that? You show them exactly where their back office is. You show them their links. You show them where to get training. You show them how to get onto these calls. You show them how to order products. You show them how to set their subscription. You show them everything that they need to know to succeed. You give them the blueprint. You say, this is all you have to do. Follow this. A, B, C. If you do this, you will succeed in this industry. And yet, what happens? They don't do it. And then what happens next? They book a call with their mentor or their upline, and they say, I don't know why I'm not getting results. It's the paradigm. You haven't changed your paradigm, you're not going to get results. So we know how to make presentations. They know how to do everything. They're like literally professional meeting attenders. They're professional Zoom call attenders. They got all the notes. They don't do anything with it. Okay, so you can't go you can go to any network marketing company, and this is the same in every single company. It's a really an interesting phenomenon. You'll find that people perform way below what they're capable of because, their paradigm is set to 40 miles an hour, and yet they have infinite horsepower underneath the hood they're not even aware of. You see, the knowing is not enough. You can watch this video 100 times, it won't be enough. The knowing is not enough. Results are the name of the game. By the fruit, you'll know them. That was pretty good advice. The results always tell an interesting story. They tell where the person is programmed. So when somebody comes to work with me, I ask a series of questions. I want to find out where they are. I want to find out where their programming is. I want to find out what's going on underneath the hood, right? I'm going to find out what's the most money you've ever earned before. And they'll say something, right? $50,000, $60,000 a year. And that's what's the lowest weight you've ever lost? Why get stuck at 190? That's my plateau, right? Ask people questions. Yeah, I'm asking them questions to find out where they're programmed. Because one of the first things you have to identify is where this programming has come from. It's something that's in their subconscious mind. Now, Josh went through an interesting exercise over the last 5 days. I want to share with you guys. He didn't eat for 5 days. Now, if anybody knows Josh, it's me. And I've never seen him go 5 hours without eating, let alone 5 days without eating. He fasted for 5 days, and it was very interesting to watch this because, now that he was not really allowed to think about food. I mean, he was thinking about food, of course, but he wasn't thinking, what am I going to eat for lunch? What am I going to eat for dinner? Because the answer is nothing. So he's like, I had to release so much mental energy thinking about food that literally I realized where my programming came from. All I had was a lot of time to think about where this programming came from. And he went through a lot of stages in those 5 days too. It was like, yeah, hangry. We went through that. In fact, I took him to Disneyland, and he walked all around the park. He's sweating. And I'm like, I feel so bad that you have to fast during all this. There's churros over here, cotton candy over here. And he's like, this is really like annoying. But he did it. And today was the day he broke his fast. Now, he's never done anything like that before. He had to change his programming. He had to change his patterns. He had to put a break in his habitual behavior to reset himself. Knowing's not enough. He studied all the diets before. In fact, he tried them all before. He never did the things he had to do to get results. He's done that now. So if you want to start to understand the paradigm, you've got to really understand the paradigm. You got to understand the power of habit, how the subconscious mind is literally programmed. And that's when you can start changing it. Now take a look at a baby. They just arrive on the scene, brand new baby. My sister just had a baby, so adorable, so cute, but everything that's going on in that baby's life, all around that baby, is the beginning of that baby's programming. Everything's going straight into the subconscious mind. In fact, their brain waves are on a level that literally receives all information. They're in a hypnotic almost state where their conscious mind hasn't even begun to form. Their conscious mind can't say, no, I don't want that, or yes, I want that. No, everything goes straight in. You have arguments going on around the baby, it's going straight into the subconscious mind. You've got trauma going on around that baby, it's going straight into the subconscious mind. It may not even show up till that baby is 35 years old. Okay, so everything that's happening around that baby is going straight in there. When the baby's arrived, it's already been programmed. That's genetic conditioning. And what we find as we get older, that we know more, and yet we're doing way less. Why is that? Well, this causes a lot of frustration in a person's life. That frustration then is expressed in all kinds of behavior patterns. That is not conducive to profit, not only in your network marketing business, but it's not going to give you good results in your life either. And so this lesson is going to be important in your life, whether you're in My Daily Choice, or whether you're in network marketing, or whether you're just want to start your own business, or you want to achieve a completely different goal altogether. But we have to understand how we are programmed. Now, I read someplace that all of our programming is pretty well complete by 7 years of age. And I thought about this because my older son, who's now almost 17 years old, I thought, I became more aware as a human being after you had turned 7 years old. And so the training that you received from me was bad information. And now as my teenager, I'm having to try and reprogram him with the right information. And of course, it's an uphill battle. How many of you guys have any teenagers in your life, right? And they start to rear their ugly head and you're like, this is me from 20 years ago. I'm staring at myself from 20 years ago. You've been through that if you've got kids. Okay, so that does cause some frustration, right? But let's start off really quickly. Go back to when we were just little kids, right? Now, I don't know if you guys have this experience. How many of you guys were troublemakers when you were children? How many of you were always called into the office? Probably not very many of you. I'm sure there's a handful of you. Robert Hollis, that was you, okay? And they call you into the office, and what they say, listen, Robert, you got to stop doing this. And why are you doing this? And Robert says, well, I don't know why I'm doing this. I'm just doing this. You know, in fact, there's a verse in Romans, I think it says, for I do the things I do not wish to do. The things I want to do, I do not do. That's exactly what this is about, right? Have you ever been in that situation? Now, when I was in the Army, I was a bit of a troublemaker. I was immature for sure. You know, they call my name, and at the time it was Schultz. Schultz. And I would say, what? First of all, you never address an officer by saying what, you know, that alone got me in trouble. I had to do so many push-ups. I had to clean the fire pits. I was doing low crawls across the whole freaking base, you guys, because I was such a pain in the butt back then. And I didn't know why I was doing that. I was just rebelling through the military. I really needed the military to straighten me out. But you know what? This kind of thing happens all throughout our lives, right? Now, I said before, corporations in North America spend over $60 billion a year on helping people know. So we got to talk about how we're going to change this programming. 2 parts of the mind we've talked about. So let's stop and think about this for a minute, because if you really don't internalize this information, it's going to be very difficult to make positive changes. Now, some of you are going to say, I don't believe this. This is a bunch of hogwash. But you know what? If you study this for any number of, a short amount of time, really, this is going to be very obvious to you. The habits of our ancestors literally have been passed down through generation and generation and generation. You see a couple of people, maybe they're very, very overweight. You'll see their kids will also be overweight. And you'll see it's not genetic. It's not just genetic. It's environment. You see, it has to do with more what you're around growing up than what your genes look like. Our body's an instrument of the mind. So these habits are passed down, right? From generation to generation. If you have a certain recipe in your family that's been passed down from generation to generation, you didn't decide one day, like, I like this or I don't like this. It was given to you, right? As a child. And so because it was given to you, you accepted it as it is. Carl Menninger of the Topeka Foundation said, environment is more important than hereditary. In other words, the people we're surrounded by have more to do with our success than our genes at birth. The baby doesn't have any choice of this environment. They don't get to choose where they're going to be. They're just here, and they've been programmed. And that programming goes on. Like I said, it kills up to 7 years, but really for the first 2 or 3 years until that baby starts to consciously think for themselves. But at that time, the programming is pretty much well set. And so as energy flows into and through us, that thinking is already there. The person's programmed to think in a certain way. The paradigm is what causes us to behave as we do. We start then at an early age, gathering information. It's all loaded up in the conscious mind, but rarely does a person do anywhere near what they're capable of doing. Paradigms, like I said, keeps people operating at a slow speed when they for sure can go much faster. The conscious mind makes decisions. And we make decisions based on all kinds of factors and facts and things that we've gathered. But most of the time, these decisions that we make aren't always carried out. And that's because of the paradigms as well. Now, if we sit down and we're very open and honest with ourselves, and we take a look at our own behavior, we're going to say, now, I know I'm not going to do this. I know I'm not going to hit 50K. I know that I'm not going to hit super affiliate. I know I'm not going to hit master affiliate. And the reason I'm not going to do that is because I haven't programmed myself to do that. If we're honest with ourselves. See, it's not just wishing and hoping. It's not like, my goal this month is to hit 100K. No, you're not going to do it unless you program yourself to do it. All right. And if I'm going to do these things, I got to change the programming within. You see, this is what your paradigm is all about. This is what thinking into results is all about. Thinking by itself won't change anything. You've got to internalize it through repetition. And at some levels, it may feel like you're lying to yourself every single day. You know, the lies I had to tell myself early on before I had reached success was, I am worthy. I am loved. I am wanted. I am successful. I'm a walking magnet for income flowing to me. Everything I touch turns to gold. I had to say affirmations. I'm enough. I'm worth it. And just because I'm not worth it to them doesn't mean I'm not worth it to me. My father abandoned me for 7 years of my early adult life in the most struggle time in my whole entire life. I needed more than anything a mentor. I needed my parents at that time in my life, and they were not there. I internalized as a young age, I'm not worth it. I'm not loved. I'm unwanted. I'm not enough. I learned that growing up. And I had to change that. I had to say, I am enough. I'm worthy. I can do this. Because if I'm not worth it to them, I'm still worth it to me. I had to say these things over and over and over. And at first, when I first started saying them, I cried because I wanted it to be true and I knew it wasn't. But as I started doing this over and over and over again, I realized I'm starting to believe it. It's starting to feel real. It's starting to feel like it's possible. It's starting to feel like this is something that makes sense for my life. Suddenly I was in harmony with that vibration. And before I knew it, I was attracting everything else that was on that vibration, on that frequency. My paradigm had changed. And so my results had changed also. Does that make sense, you guys? That's really what got me into the personal development industry to begin with. I went from earning $50,000 a year to $1 million a month. Just like that in a 3-year period. And it was no coincidence that my success lined exactly up with my personal growth. Now, people come into this industry all the time and they set these goals and they want to achieve all these things, and yet they want to also avoid personal growth. You can't have it both ways. You can't have your cake and you can't eat it too, right? You have to choose. If you're going to succeed, you have to also grow as a person. There's no other way around it. I was negative and I was broke-minded. I had a bad relationship with money and above all, people in general, especially men. Go figure. I was trained as a young child to know that men are unreliable. Men are flaky. They disappear from your life. They don't last. They don't stick by your side in the bad times. They dip out. I internalized that. I had to change my relationship with how I viewed men. I had to change my relationship with how I viewed people. And I had to change my relationship with how I viewed money. Money wasn't this elusive thing that was just reserved for the elite, and only the super, people that are in this little group could have it. No, it's not like that. It's for everybody. But you have to be on the same frequency as that money you wish to attract in your life. I learned most of the things, I learned most of the things growing up were not true. Most of the things I learned growing up were not true. I was taught that, I was raised to believe that you need a good formal education in order to be successful. Well, that's not true. I only had a bachelor's degree from an online college that I barely finished. Not only that, Josh only was in college for a couple months and dropped out. He's wildly successful now. Has nothing to do with his education. I was raised to believe that you have to have business experience to succeed in business. Well, that's not true. I didn't have any business experience, and yet here we are running a $500 million company all over the world. So that's not true. How did that happen? Well, because these things happen, I began to study this, right? I started really diving really deep into this. I wanted to know what happened. I wanted to know what changed within me, because I wanted to know if there was some formula that I was following. I guess I was an unconscious competent. Bob says that about himself. Josh for sure is that. He was just in harmony with the natural laws of the universe. He didn't even realize it. I wanted to know what it was, because if I knew what it was, I knew I could teach other people. And if I could teach other people how to unlock themselves, then they could all go on to succeed. Really high performers in every company out there. Company doesn't even know what they're doing. They don't know. They'd spend a fortune on shattering these individuals to try to figure out what it is they're doing that's so different. And they find out it's not from what neighborhood they're in. It's not because of, who their friends are. It's not because of, their income that they started out with. It's not because of any of those things. It's because they think differently. They know something. They operate differently. They operate in a different paradigm. It has nothing to do with intelligence. There's smart people that are wealthy. There's stupid people that are wealthy. Just look on TikTok. You see what I'm talking about. And I just want to say that I'm not anti-education. I think education is great. My whole family is in education, but that's not what you need to succeed. So we have to ask ourselves, why do people behave as they do, and why do they not behave as they want to? Now take a look at your team for a minute. Start to think of the people that are in your organization right now. If you don't have a team, then visualize your future organization, okay? So take a look at your team. The people who have gathered the most knowledge on your team, yet they don't have the best results. Now, how can we close this knowing, doing gap? That's what this is about, right? You watch people move, you start to study them. You watch people, how they operate on your team, and even in your daily life, start to watch people and see how they're acting. You're going to notice that everything that they're doing is habitual. When you start to understand that the knowledge that they're holding, that they've gathered, is not controlling what they're doing, you're going to figure out where their paradigm is. The paradigm is always the problem. The only problem we ever have in the world is ignorance. That's it. So paradigm is a problem, and the knowing, doing gap is miles apart. So we got to close that gap. We've got to focus on the paradigm, and we've got to help people understand why they're doing what they're doing. When we do that, then everything starts to change. So I want to just wrap up this lesson, because I don't want it to go too long, to give you guys some exercises tonight. Well, you first download all the worksheets and go through that, but also before you go to sleep tonight, and when you wake up in the morning, I want you to write out. Tonight, I want you to write out what your future self looks like. Write a script as if it were a movie. You're the starring actress or actor in that script. Write out a script of what that looks like. But I also want you to take a look at some of your old habitual programming that is holding you back. On one side, I want you to write out what currently is, what's your current results. And on the other side, I want you to write out what you want. And I want you to destroy the side of what currently is, because that's no longer going to be. And I want you to focus on every single day, read your new script on what is coming and what is the highest and next best version of yourself. Focus on that every single day. And before you know it, you'll start to see things begin to shift. Things begin to change. Your results start to change. Your behavior starts to change. Your habits begin to change. And before you know it, you're standing on the stages with the #1 income earners all over the world. And you're going to look back, and you're going to need a telescope to look at to see how far you've come. So thank you guys so much for hopping on and being a part of this training. I will see you guys next week on Wednesday, 9 a.m. Pacific. Bye, guys. Have a good day.